this wallet. The guy holds onto the wallet, gives him $50 as as good faith, and the guy disappears, and he opens the wallet, it's got $20 in there, or something like that. So, I mean, there are ways of, using paper. There's a $5 bill on one end and a bunch of stack of papers in the wallet and another 5 on the other end. And you say, look, there's all these 5s and 10s and all this kind of stuff. So confidence is to, convince someone or con someone to do something. And it still goes on. You read about it all the time. Elderly women, men proposing marriage and all this stuff and all kinds of things, and borrowing money. Oh, he needs money, he's getting divorced, and to settle it, he needs some money, and he borrows money from this elderly woman, and she's madly in love with him, and will give him $10,000 to settle the divorce so that they can get married and live happily ever after, and he disappears. That's a confidence man, where he takes advantage of a situation, and you fall for his line. And so you have it in a lot of areas, and all kinds of things. So they did that. And also, pickpockets, crowded. New York is crowded, and, Boston was crowded, and you get into a subway or you get into the streetcar or something, you brush up against someone. They were very good. You feel for the wallet, or you see the bump in the coat or in the pants, and you slip it out and stuff like that. They don't feel, because people are banging into each other on subways and streetcars and things like that, and then or in crowded streets or in a store or maybe in an elevator if they had an elevator, and you walk out and you find out your wallet's gone. So they did that. And also robbery periodically, kinds of things like that.
Why did Thomas Burns write the book, American Leading Professional Criminals, and why did you mention it?
Oh, professional criminals. Yeah, well, because he was a policeman. He had been an officer in the police department, and those things sold. People are always why are people fascinated by gangster movies? How come they still make gangster? There's something about it that just seems fascinating, to read about men who have their own laws and their own rules and their own, it's like politicians, right? And their own regulations and do what they want and everything else. I mean, they get caught. That's part of it. There's always a moral to the story. But, a lot of these former detectives, are involved in arresting criminals and involved in, with the underworld as policemen, and after 30 or 40 years, they write a book, and the book sells, and so they make money. Why would they do it? The profit motive as well. I mean, why would anybody write a book?
Right, but why did that book have anything to do with Jewish mobsters?
Well, because he mentions, I used it in the early period when I was looking for things about Jews, because he does give names, of various Jewish criminals that he had dealt with and encountered. And if you look, when I have a copy of the book here in my study, but if you look at it, it gives, a description of the person. It's like an FBI file, the height, the weight, the eye color, what they did, the kinds of criminal activity, their nicknames, and all this kind of stuff. And he did that not just for, it was just, many criminals, and here and there were these Jewish confidence men, and many of them have red hair, which goes along with the anti-Semitic notion that the Jews, as the Antichrist and agents of Satan, were redheaded. The devil is supposed to have red hair. And so they, redheaded Jew, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, when he published the book, it wasn't as an anti-Semitic tract against Jews. He was just writing about, it's a thick book, with their pictures and biographies and stories about them. And it was, people bought it because it was a good read, and they reprinted it a number of times. And in recent times as well, it's become kind of I don't want to say a textbook, but one of the books written about 19th century criminality in New York. And so he made some money from it. And then he got on the lecture circuit. Isn't that what academics and others do in journalists do? You write, come on, let's be honest. You write a book, and then if it's a hit in any way, you're invited, and you make $50,000-$60,000 in a lecture. It should only happen to me, Never does, never will. But and then you get on the lecture circuit, make money that way, and they buy your book, and you have book signings and all this kind of stuff at Barnes and Noble.
Exactly.
Borders no longer exists, I guess, but Barnes and Noble and other places, and it's fun, and you get to meet people. And I once gave a talk at the Barnes and Noble, which is closed now, and near Lincoln Center in New York, and the place was filled with people, and it was about this book. And many of them came not to hear me talk about the book or anything, but to ask me if I heard about their relative so-and-so and so-and-so. And I mean, it was the funniest thing, where people would say, did you ever hear of such and such? He was my cousin, and this one here was my grandfather. How can I find information? They came to ask me, to help them find out about relatives that they heard about. Usually they're third generation who want to know about these people, and they can't find any information. I still get emails from so many people asking me where can they find information about an uncle, and where can they find information about a cousin, or what about if I heard of their grandfather who was arrested in Boston, and so you get that as well. So it's still a fascinating topic for many, many people.
Are you able to help these people?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, I don't have information on everyone, but I can direct them to sources. They don't know where to go. But if you're dealing with the FBI, it's going to be years.
Right.
In the old days, it would say 30 years ago, you could get information pretty quickly. And in recent times, you have to wait sometimes 7 and 8 years. And so you can expect a long, long wait.
You had mentioned several times that a lot of these Jewish mobsters would sue the press. What was that about?
Oh, well, Jake Guzik was classic. He would keep suing the newspapers, and they'd write articles about him. Most of them were true. And so he'd sue them. And his friends, Jake Guzik was an interesting character. He came out of, his mother and father owned houses of prostitution, and his mother had once been a prostitute herself. And he was the treasurer of the Capone organization. And when he went to jail for income tax evasion, he took an IQ test. Now, he made a lot of money for Capone, and you know what he got on his IQ test? 85, which is like moron. At any rate, I laughed when I read that because I had the file and all this stuff about him. You know, he probably fooled around, didn't want to show he was brighter, but a super bright guy. And actually, Al Capone said, when he was in jail, he says, my best friend is Jake. And of all his friends, the Italians and others, the one who worried about his family, made sure they had money, made sure that his kids were in school and all this, was Jake Guzik. And so he called Jake, my best friend and everything else. And he was decent. Well, Guzik kept suing the newspapers. And they'd say, Jake, you're not going to win. It's ridiculous. You're not going to win. Why are you suing him? He said, look, I pay these judges a lot of money. I want to make some use out of them. So, I mean, that was it. I mean, the judges were on the take. So he would sue them. He would lose. But his joke was, or his thought was, that, look, I'm paying these guys money, these judges. They're on the take. And then he even once described how it is when a judge is just starting out, it'll cost you $20. And then as he works along, he's getting a little heavier, so you got to pay him a little more. By the time he reaches the Supreme Court of the state, you got to pay him a lot more because he's big and fat and heavy and all this kind of stuff. So he weighs more and he needs more money, etc. Yeah, so a lot of them kept suing newspapers, but it didn't help really because the press, had information and sources and things like that, and they had police records and files, and they interviewed policemen, but a lot of them sued them anyway to protect their good name. Not many did. The smart ones tried to stay out of the press as much as they could because, again, it would humiliate and embarrass the family. One of my stories in the book, which is a true story about a man by the name of, what the heck was his name? Oh, he was one of the killers of Dutch Schultz, Mendy Weiss. And he was arrested. He wouldn't talk. He was tough. I don't think it was Mendy. It was someone. I just can't think of his name offhand right now. But at any rate, the police were interrogating him, and he was tough. He's really tough. One of his nicknames was the Bug. Bug was in American English. Bug could be tough as a cockroach, bug, or bugs means nuts. And with regard to Ben Siegel, Bugsy was because he was nuts. He was also tough, but he was nuts. At any rate, they interviewed him, and he wouldn't talk. And so the interrogators of the police department said, okay, we're going to bring in your family to testify to your good character. And he said, don't do it. I'll tell you what you want to know. Don't humiliate me in front of my family. And this is, written down. It's in part of the protocols of the interrogation. And he told them what they wanted to know, because he didn't want his family brought in. And his comment was, do not humiliate me, do not shame me in front of my family. In other words, they knew that what they were doing was not an honorable profession. It was not honorable in the community, although the community did utilize them against the Nazi Bund, Meyer Lansky and others, fight against the Nazis in the late 30s. But they knew that what they did was not honorable. It was not respected. It was not something that, quote-unquote, nice Jewish boys did. It's not something that brought honor and respectability to their families. And so they tried as much as possible to keep them out of it. And this person, I can't think of his name. It's not Mendy Weiss, it's another one. Oh, can't think of his name. But at any rate, at the court case, he goes up to one of his relatives, said to keep his brother out of it. And he said to his brother there before he left, he says, do whatever you have to do to earn an honest living. If you have to make 5 cents, you make 5 cents, but don't get